Hello and welcome to another episode of Extra Vibes, the show that gives you extra content.
Extra content, that's
Oh,
right.
yes.
The only place you can go if you're looking for Beyond the Vibe extra content on the internet.
Exactly. It's the only one. And this week we're doing the top 10 classic bands that are still on top, aren't we?
Yes, in our opinion, yes. What do we mean by that, Mr. Basie? So basically, we're kind of summarising that. Obviously, it's reaching that point. It's been a big discussion. Brad from the band Massive, Brad Moore, has recently discussed it on the Sound Age podcast. That bands are obviously reaching that point in their careers where maybe they're not serving the legacy that's come before. They're not serving the ticket price that's put on the price of their shows. You know, a lot of them are still playing big arenas, and do they really still deserve to be headlining Download? So all these questions have kind of come up. So that kind of, rather than look negatively, not saying that a lot of people have done that, but rather than look negatively on the bands that aren't doing that, me and Ryan kind of wanted to look at the bands that are still, in our opinion, hitting that height and still deserve to be on top, don't we, mate?
Yeah, and you know, it's that thing of, despite their age, perhaps, you know, they're still physically able to do a complete tour. You come away from it feeling that you've got that value for money, even if you are perhaps spending a little bit more, maybe, you know,
if it matches up,
exactly.
it's not too bad, you know, because you can feel away thinking, because a lot of these artists, I don't know about your list, but like mine, you come away and you think, oh, I've finally seen them. Especially for younger guys like us, you know, when we were on our teens, we obviously probably saw a lot of these bands, and I think 10, 15 years ago, they were serving, you know, at a higher level than they are now, just due to the age factor. But there's still a lot of bands where I think you go and see them, you come away and think that's the experience I wanted after all this time, you know, and that I deserved, you know, for a lot of time. That's about 50, 60 quid a ticket. So
yeah, this is it. But yeah, a lot of the bands that I think are on my list, I think you definitely get your bang for your buck, despite their age. So have we got any honourable mentions before we get into this list?
I've got Aerosmith.
Oh, yes.
Honorable mention. So I saw Aerosmith at Download, I think about 2011, and they were absolutely awesome. Like, the biggest thing I came away from it was that, you know, it just felt professional. It felt like everything that I wanted an Aerosmith gig to be. The only reason I haven't got them in my top 10 is because I haven't seen them since then. I know they're due to tour on a rescheduled tour with Rival Sons, in doing arenas and stadiums and whatnot in 2022. So I imagine that they're still very much capable. I'd have no surprises if Steven Tyler can still deliver it, because he's just, when I saw him, what would have been 10 years ago now, he was absolutely insane. His voice was just still there. And yeah, it's just more personally, because obviously I don't feel like I can, there's other bands that I have seen or I've seen videos of that, you know, very recent that still kill it. I've got Uriah Heep as well, and Magnum. Two bands that still seem to be bringing out great albums, still seem to be on the touring circuit, and whenever I've seen them or seen live videos, they look great. What about yourself?
Oh, I mean, my dad was like Uriah Heep, so that's kind of his honourable mention. He was big on it. He was just like Uriah Heep straight away. He was basically forcing me to mention it. So there you go. It's it.
There you go, Father. There you go. We have actually asked some of the musicians on the scene, for their opinion on who their favourites classic bands are that still hitting the top.
Yes, so keep an eye out for that, as you will see some familiar faces throughout this week's episode. But yes, with those honourable mentions out of the way, we'll get into the top 10. What's your first number 10?
So my first number 10 is a band that's due to reform. I mean, very early 90s band. And I'm very into the singer's side project, and for me, his voice is still very much there, and it's the Black Crowes. Probably your band very much more than my band. I mean, I got into them because of your recommendation, Ryan, and yeah, I'm really into the Chris Robertson Brotherhood, which is kind of his very progressive side project, and I just think coming back, there's going to be a lot of hype around it. It's not on, maybe not on the same level, but similar to when AC/DC reformed and came back around. It's that kind of expectation, and I think they're still at a height in terms of the quality of the performance. I know they've been doing a lot of acoustic sessions that you've been checking out, and it still seems like they're very much capable of going out there and delivering a live show. So yeah, I think just number 10. I think that's a nice solid opener.
Yeah, it's they're one of those bands. I mean, the brothers, the Robinson brothers, they've got a history of falling out, breaking up, and then about 5 or 10 years later reforming again.
Okay, pay for the holiday.
Inevitably get an argument, and then they'll probably break up again. But they're, I think they're in like their 50s now, but they're still very much on top there. And speaking of that, I do have them at number 10 as well. So
do you?
Yeah,
fantastic. I thought I'd sneak that in. When I thought about it, I thought, I'll get a little one behind Mr. Batesy. I mean, I would like to put on record. I think he's probably, just stuck that one in there, just to make it. But I'm not surprised they're in your list. I know that
they made it in earlier on today, so I will say it's a late edition. Mm. But I was looking at that because obviously they are doing this reunion tour, and I think of my list, they are probably one of the younger set of bands that are in there. So
I'd be very surprised if you went to see them and came away disappointed. I think if you're a Black Crows fan, I think they'll be able to deliver the show that you want. So I think it'll be killer. I mean, they're gigging in the US with bloody Dirty Honey. I mean, that's like your ultimate.
But this is it. We're diving into fantasy territory here. But they're doing like this 30th anniversary celebration of the first album, Shake You Moneymaker, and I'm sure they'll probably throw in a few other songs in there as well. But I think it'll be a great gig. Nice one. That is both of our number 10s. So
that's why we get on, innit?
I know, look at that.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Baz from Massive Wagons here. I just want to thank Aaron for asking me to come on and just talk a little bit about a classic rock band that are still slaying it. And I've always slayed it, in my opinion, and are probably the ultimate classic British classic rock band, an absolutely timeless band. I think the songs will go on forever. They're incredible, and that band is a little bit cheeky, baby. Just caught them just at the end of their career. I think is UFO. I think UFO were kind of introduced to me, as were a lot of bands, by Adam and Alex in Massive Wagons. When we first met, they kind of introduced me to UFO. Now I couldn't believe I hadn't sort of delved a little deeper into them. I knew this sort of the Doctor and these kind of songs, Rock Bottom, and I knew the classics, but I'd never sort of investigated further than that. They're just unbelievable. Formed in 1968. 1968 they've been going since. That is unbelievable, and still touring. I think they were just halfway through a farewell tour before lockdown kicked in, so still touring. They've had a number of lineup changes, but the talent speaks for itself. Michael Schenker, Tonka Chapman, Vinnie Moore, the current guitar player, is incredible. Pete Way, Paul Raymond, who sadly died a couple of years ago while we were on tour. Actually, I remember hearing about that when we were doing our last tour, full tour, which was very sad. Phil Mogg, Jason Bonham played drums for him for a while, but Phil Mogg is he's got such a unique voice and a delivery. I love his delivery. I love his style. I just think the guy, he just kind of bucks the trend of the classic long hair. He's got kind of short. Well, he's got short hair now. He had a slightly longer hair back in the day, maybe, but he's just got he's got his own class, and he's the only man I've ever heard be absolutely blind drunk talking to an audience that he can hardly speak. And then he'll sing the songs absolutely perfectly, word for word, note for note. It's unbelievable. The way they craft songs is just... It's like no other band I've ever heard. I've got to be honest. They're able to sort of combine great hooks and riffs and melody with not overly complex, but exciting arrangements, if you like. They arrange the songs in an exciting manner, and you're listening, you truly feel they could go anywhere, and they can go anywhere at any time. But it doesn't sound overblown. You never lose the sort of essence of the song, if you like. I just think they're absolutely incredible masters of what they do. If I was to recommend a song to check out, I would say "Love to Love" is probably my favourite UFO song. There's a great video on YouTube of them playing it live. I think it's in 2005, like a studio session, and it's just amazing. And I think they're coming to their end of the career, but yeah, if you were to check out a classic rock band, for me, it'd have to be UFO. Just unbelievable band, album after album. They just don't disappoint. Unbelievable songwriters, and when they finally knock it on the head, it'll be a sad day. But yeah, thanks guys. I've been Baz from Massive Wagons. Thanks for listening, and stay safe, keep on rocking, and catch you real soon. Much love.
Number 9, I'm going to go with a band that's they're not necessarily my taste, but they're a band that has been consistently headlining various different places like Download and all that over the years. And for me, there's other people I know that are very much into them, and they've got longevity, they've got all this, that, and the other. It's Slipknot. As I say, they're not my taste. They're a bit too far down that heavy road for me. But to have lasted the length of time that they have done, they've broken into, I think, that kind of classic band territory now. Because you've got
100%.
I mean, I can't remember, when did they form? It was like what, 90s?
The first album, I believe, came out in 1999, but I think they were around much earlier than that, as far as I'm aware. I mean, I think their inclusion is warranted just because of their impact. I think it puts them on this mantra of being a classic band, and for me, I think that I mean, to be fair, I think every classic band, right, could probably do with a bit of a break in their career, and I feel like Slipknot are probably getting to that point now.
I feel they're reaching it. Yeah.
I mean, I actually really enjoyed the last album, but my partner Jade disliked it because it wasn't like Slipknot at all. It was much more sort of like almost like Radio 1, sort of like Slipknot. It was still very much had that raw energy, but you had these massive choruses which were more connected to Stone Sour. And Corey's very much capable of that. But when you listen to them first 2 Slipknot albums, I mean, I was terrified of them when I was younger.
It looks like something out of a horror movie, the early stuff.
I've been to see Slipknot a couple of times at Download in the Pomp, and you come out of it like you've had an experience, because the crowd's so rough and the gig's so intense. But it's a legendary. Like you want to come away and tell people that you've experienced a Slipknot gig and that. And I think they could still deliver that. I'm not saying that they couldn't with the break, but I just, you know what I mean. I feel like with DC, some bands just need that time just to come away,
bit of a gap.
and then when they come back, everybody's just hungry for it again.
I think it's perhaps because they've just been consistently there since the 90s. But yes, the thing is, for me, it's like they've broken into that top billing, and they've stayed there for that period of time. So that's my number 9.
Cool. Mine is we have Black Crowes reasonably relevant, Slipknot reasonably young. I'm now going full other end of the scale. I mean, bless him. But the key with this, which is a big part of this list that we didn't mention at the start, is I'm really into classic bands keeping themselves fit and healthy, so that they can go out and gig. And the things they're not good at, surrounding themselves with people that do the things they're not good at, that bring the energy to the show. And I think my next person is perfect for that, and it's Alice Cooper. And a lot of people who go to a Cooper gig and they probably come away and think, it feels a bit aged at this point. But fuck that, I ain't having that. I genuinely think that the key with Alice Cooper is that people who go, and for Alice himself, he's very comfortable with who he is and what he's doing. You're going to that sort of gig, and it's going to be, you get all the theatrics, you get him chopping his head off, but you want that. It's all part of the whole nostalgia and the performance. And if you didn't get that, you'd be disappointed. And I think he keeps the level high by the expectations he sets himself. He keeps himself very healthy, hasn't drank in years. And there's a classic story he finished a gig and he was throwing up blood, and he just thought, I don't want this. I'm never going to do this again, and never drank again. And he surrounds himself with amazing musicians. You know, I know Ori Amphi's done it. I think at the minute he's got a female guitarist whose name escapes me. But yeah, he's always promoted younger and female guitarists, which I think is cool. And yeah, he's just. I'd love seeing Alice Cooper, man. I come away with nothing but joy. Have you seen Alice Cooper?
No, because I mean, if people don't know, I used to live in the back and beyond in a really rural place called Cornwall. So there's probably quite a large amount of the bands that are actually on my list that I haven't actually seen in person. So I'm judging off other people's experiences who I know very well, or like, you know, videos and whatnot that have been recent. But yes, he's on the list, but he's one of those that I've never really thought, you know what, I'm going to go to a live gig and go and see him today. Yeah, but yeah,
it's a spectacle. It's very interesting. He gets it. His daughter goes on tour with him and does a lot of the characters and stuff on stage, which I quite like. And it's a bit panto at this point, but if you know what it is and you enjoy it for that, then I think it's still very much respectful of his legacy.
How are we doing, everybody? It is Jack here from Piston, and the good guys at Beyond the Vibe podcast have asked me to pick my favourite band pre-1995. So it's got to be, well, my favourite band pre-1995 that I think is still killing it to this day. And it's got to be Thunder. Absolutely amazing band. Sound incredible. And we're supporting them next year at their arena show in Birmingham. So make sure you get your tickets. But yeah, thanks for the good work, guys, and I'll see you soon.
That's a fair shout. My number 8. I'm going with a guy that's been around a long, long time, but I think he's done a very clever thing in the fact that he's moved away from what he used to do. It's Robert Plant. Now, he could have just essentially have done a Led Zeppelin thing where it's like Robert Plant plays Led Zeppelin songs, or, you know, in arenas or whatever, because he could if he wanted to.
And it would be in arenas.
Yeah. But he's chosen now to kind of go down into the smaller venues again. And I think that's a really admirable thing. And he's doing his own thing now. It's like each album has a bit of a different style. He gets quite adventurous with things. And he doesn't just do Led Zeppelin songs. He's very picky, isn't he? Like, he'll only do probably a couple. And that's like right near the end of the gig. Yeah, you know, he's clever with it as well. He doesn't keep that kind of high level range that he obviously used to do. Like he has brought it down a bit. But yeah, I've heard from many people that, you know, it's still very much an experience. And it's a different kind of experience now because it's a bit more intimate with it being in a smaller venue, and obviously he plays a bit of a different style kind of thing now. So it's it offers something different, but you still get that thing of I've seen Robert Plant now, so there is that element still there. So yes, he's my number 8 for that reason.
No, I think I love the fact Robert Plant's still cool. I think that's the biggest compliment you can give him, and I think that's an expression of that. No, good choice. My number 8 is a band that have never been cool, even though they think they are. But I do think they're one of the most underrated, particularly now that they've got better, and it's Saxon.
Ah, yes.
Saxon live for me are just fucking awesome. So good, man. And people really, because they're like the band Spinal Tap were inspired by and all that stuff. You know, it's. But I've got a special place for Saxon. I've seen them about bloody 9 times. You know, and I don't think I've ever come away disappointed. You know, I think Biff is as much as he's a bit of, you know, he's easy to take the piss out of. I think he's retained his voice very well. Yeah. I think he controls a crowd very well. Now that at this point, even though some of their albums don't have a full back-to-back quality, they've got so many great songs over that period of you know, it's about 40 years at this point, which is crazy. That when you go and see Saxon, if you're a Saxon fan, you know you're going to enjoy it. You know, I remember seeing them in Sheffield, and they'd just done this documentary of Harvey Goldsmith, and he'd sent them out. And basically, he picked the set list, and it was just awesome. They had Dogs of War, Crusader, Solid Ball of Rock, and then all the classics, Denim and Leather, Strong Arm of the Law, and it was just awesome, man. So yeah. So I think anybody who's seen Saxon will know the level they hit when they're on it. So yeah, Saxon.
No, I agree with that. I saw them down in Cornwall. I mean, that's an example of they'll go anywhere. It's a real kind of workhorse band, I would say, because they did like a 3-hour slot.
That's awesome. Yeah.
At the time, they're like 50 odd years old, and they're doing like this massive 3-hour slot in a small venue. Essentially in the middle of nowhere, and it was sold out. So yeah, I can totally get why. My number 7. Again, this isn't a band that I'm necessarily into, but this is a band that has had continuous longevity. They've stuck around for a long time. We keep hearing that people are really into them. It's Thunder.
Be on a lot of people's lists.
Yeah, it would be on a lot of people's lists, and I feel that they have to be in there because of that. Because there is this continuing popularity with them. And obviously they've just had this new album out, which has been very popular. I think they won Best British Band or something, didn't they, at the Planet Rock thing as well, didn't they? So they're still very relevant today, and they've still shown, I think, that they can retain that standard that they've had. So yeah, they're at my number 7 for that reason.
No, I think that's a good choice. Like I said, I think that'll be in a lot of people, very high on a lot of people's list.
Hi, we're Grace and Aaron
from When Rivers Meet, and we believe the band that's still killing it are Thunder.
Thunder, we love them. We've been to see them live so many times. We never get disappointed by their live shows. Their new records are amazing. We love their acoustic stuff they've been doing, so we are totally
Thunder fans.
My number 7 is probably quite low, but it's just for personal experience. Is Metallica. Main reason they're on this.
What?
Right. Main reason for this is the fucking in the round bollocks that they do. That's number 1, right? Yeah. Second reason is just from personal experience. I've only ever seen them once, which is probably unfair. I know a lot of people seen them and say they're awesome. Saw them at Download. It took about 2.5 hours for them to set up, and they came out. And I just couldn't get into it, man. Like, and I've like to think I'm quite a big Metallica fan. I'm very much early Metallica. I know that sounds bullshit, but like Kill 'Em All for me was just like, it's just awesome because I just love that new wave of British heavy metal inspired sort of Bay Area thrash, and love Ride the Lightning, Master. Love for obviously the Black Album, and I really love the modern albums, like I love Death Magnetic. I think if it was recorded better, it'd be a great album. And the most recent one, Hardwired Self-Destruct, I thought was a killer album. And the thing is that I like about Metallica is that because I'm now accidentally singing the praises, but I'm going to come around to cussing them live. Is at the core they are influenced by proper British rock like Budgie, Tigers of Pantang, Praying Mantis. They're really into that new wave of British heavy metal as well as 70s bands. But live, I just get this feeling with them that I can't emotionally connect myself to. That they're just a bit. It's almost like Argos metal. Like I just don't get that connection. Like I don't feel like I'm going to go in there and be in a mosh pit and have this rawness. Like we're saying with a Slipknot gig, you go in there and you're going to come out with cuts and bruises. You're going to remember it for the rest of your life. I don't. Or like some other gigs, like with Saxon, you go there, you headbang all night, you're singing all the songs. And it might be because I'm maybe not the world's biggest Metallica fan, but I just didn't get the energy or the overall live show experience from it. I didn't get that extra level that for me push other bands have got in their arsenal, whether it be material or owning a stage. I just didn't get that. But as I say, I may be wrong. It's just my own personal opinion. I've got them at number 7.
So they are good enough to still be in the top 10.
I think I've put them up there for the many reasons that I think they'd warrant to still be at the top, because I think material wise, I think they're still very strong. I think in terms of going out there and performing, I don't think they're gonna. if you're a diehard Metallica fan, I don't think you're going to come away disappointed. Do you know what I mean? The whole reason we kind of did this list was because the Motley Crue, Vince Neil stuff, and for me, Metallica are miles away from that. You know, James's voice still sounds great. Rob Trujillo's an absolute beast. You know, and they still perform to a high level. It's just in terms of like
the live experience.
Well, all of it. Like, I think there's other bands that I'd rather give the top of that, and also because I think Metallica overall are still one of the biggest bands in the world. They don't need me putting them first on this list. Do you know what I mean? Whereas there's a few other bands that I'd like to give that little tip of the hat to.
That's fair enough. My number 6, it's a band that you mentioned in your honourable mentions. It's Aerosmith. As you say, I mean, I haven't seen Aerosmith, but I've heard lots of people comment from just a few years ago, having said that Steven Tyler is still very much on his game vocally. Now that's a big thing for me with all of these. If the vocalist goes, it's curtains, isn't it? Really. And I think that all of them have retained that original voice that they had from back in the day, or have at least adapted so that it's not noticeable. And I think they are currently successfully doing that. And as you say, they're about to go on the tour again. They've stayed at the top of the game, you know, and people clearly still love going to see them. People enjoy it. So for that reason, they're at my number 6.
Cool. Got absolutely no problems with that, man. My number 6 is another Bay Area thrash band. A lot of people think this is disgraceful, but fuck them. It's Testament.
Yes.
I sing as my metal version of Marcus King. Any opportunity to sing Testament's praises, I would, because I just think they're so underrated. You know, like they've been knocking it. Like the last 3 albums have been some of the finest heavy metal, thrash metal records I've ever heard. And nobody seems to give them the acknowledgement for it, you know. And live, they can still deliver that, you know, that rawness and that heaviness, and they're still heavier than most young bands that are coming through, you know. It's just like, and I just want, I think they deserve that credibility a little bit, you know. The fact they've been able to, a lot of this is maybe about the evolution, you know, even though we're not a massive fan of either of them, but Thunder in some ways, you know, to be able to adapt to the climate as an aging band and be able to find that place in all of it, you know. And I think Testament have adapted superbly. I just don't think maybe they've got the same platform that a band like Metallica have got, you know, which is disappointing to me, you know. And I want any opportunity I have, I'll draw people's attention to them, because they're still absolutely killing it, man. I mean, Alex Skolnick is one of the best guitarists out there at the minute, and again, I don't think he gets the acknowledgement he deserves. So yes, number 6, Testament.
Fair enough. I have seen Testament, even though I'm not a big fan of Testament. I saw them years ago when they're on the 3-band billing with Judas Priest, Megadeth, and then Testament.
I think we were at that gig. I think
possibly we were strangely at the gig, even though we didn't know each other at the time. But yes, they have a very strong core fan base, don't they? Because I noticed at the gig and I was looking around and I was like, Testament shirt, Testament shirt, Testament shirt. And they were the band that were at the bottom of the billing, you know, they were the ones that came on first. So they still definitely have this kind of strong core fan base. And I think, you know, if you're into that kind of music, they have that kind of loyalty, don't they, where they, you know, fans will definitely go and see them every time if they're there. So I can see why.
Hello, Brad here, from the Aussie beer drinking, foot stomping, hell raising rock and roll band Massive, coming to you from nowhere, blank space. Classic albums or classic bands that have still preserved their legacy. It's hard because I actually don't think many have. You know, if you think about how they sounded and how they, you know, at their peak and how they sound now, it's not the same. They haven't preserved it. They've held on for dear life, you know, tuned their guitars down and whatever. But if I'm going to say on performance level, I think Guns N' Roses still play at a top level. You know, Axl can still sing, Slash still rocks. But that's only provisionally, only if they release a new album, because you can't live off, you know, what you did in 1988 and 1991 forever. So if Guns N' Roses release a new album, then that's a classic band that's preserved their legacy. And that's a very long-winded answer for a very simple question. I'm sorry for wasting your time.
Cool. My number 5 is it's Pearl Jam. Now, some people may go, they're not a classic band. What are you talking about? It's like, well, if you look at it though, they've been going since like what, 1991. So I think at this point, I think we can say they're a classic band because they play in stadiums, you know, and they're still doing it now, and they're still performing to a very high level. Eddie Vedder hasn't lost his voice. Mm-hmm. You know, he's still at top tier, isn't he? Yeah, some of the albums that they brought out recently have still been received very well. They're still very much on top of their game. So yeah, for those reasons, I think, you know, they're just below that top 4 because I think they're not quite top tier. I don't think. But I think maybe in I don't know, 5 or 6 years when you get those top tier bands, as we talked about with like Thunder and stuff, everybody's kind of moving up a little bit. And I think Pearl Jam are in line to move up just a bit further.
It feels like they've always been the outsider band a little bit.
Yeah, just outside.
Despite 10 being like one of the classic albums of all time. I mean, everyone always tells me to get into Pearl Jam because apparently like the guitarists are very much my taste. But I've tried on occasion. Maybe I need to try harder, you know. But I do agree that I think they'll, because of they seem to be very professional. They seem to care only about the music, you know. And like you say, Eddie's voice just seems to get better, you know. So I think they will continue as other bands fall away. They'll maybe fall into that place, you know. I can't imagine them headlining festivals though, which is weird. No, I couldn't imagine them headlining Download, and I don't know why.
It's an interesting one because in America they have headlined on different festivals. There isn't. I don't think in the UK they're a little bit further behind in that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like maybe you could have them. I mean, do you think they could headline Download?
Download's a difficult one. So I could see them headlining something like Glastonbury.
See, I think that's well far out the reach. Just because Glastonbury, I think if you're a rock band that headlines Glastonbury, you've got to be the highest level because it hasn't got the alternativeness, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, obviously we've seen people like Foo Fighters and stuff, and I don't think they're too far away from that. And they're obviously not as big. But
Radio One band though, aren't they? Foo Fighters, and Glastonbury's like on that.
Yeah,
on that same sort of scale.
Yeah, but yes, that's my number 5. We could probably go down a black hole with them, but yeah. You know.
Hi, John from These Wicked Rivers. Ryan and Aaron have asked me to talk about a classic band that I think is still preserving their legacy. So instantly, the first band that came to mind was Pearl Jam. That I absolutely love this band. I love that for the whole 30 odd years of the career, they've done everything on their own terms. They've never sort of pandered to what the industry's doing at the time, things like that. They when you listen to their music, you can hear the influences, but it never sounds like their influences. You can hear the Neil Young influence, the Led Zeppelin influence, the Who, but it still always sounds like Pearl Jam. I love that they've got this huge back catalogue of classic songs, and when you go to see them live, they take full advantage of that. Every gig when they go on tour, every single gig's a different set every night, and they never lose any quality because all the songs are so good. They've done everything on their own terms. They're still, even up to last year, still releasing great music. Gigaton last year, absolutely incredible album. And yeah, Pearl Jam, what a band.
Cool. My number 5 is it's kind of like half band, half a gentleman, but mainly gentleman, and it's the Reverend Mr. Billy Gibbons.
Oh yes.
And my main headline for this is Billy Gibbons is still fucking cool. Like he's still the coolest fucker in the entire thing, and I just like his most recent album that's just come out. Is so cool, and it's heavy and it's relevant. Like it feels like it's still him expressing himself creatively, and that I dig that. That means a lot to me, man. Because the dude's a pensioner at this point, you know, and he's coming out there and he's teaching people things. You know, like there's some songs on that new album. That's got this like 60s surf vibe about it, and I love that. I feel like people would listen to that and go, "Oh, this is cool." You know, young bands would be like, "Oh, this is awesome." You know, and Billy's one of them where he's acknowledged what he's good at and he knows what he's good at. He's not got a great voice now, but he does the Billy Gibbons growl, and people want that, and he lets it work to what he does. You know, I mean, the last ZZ Top, the two last ZZ Top albums were great as well. You know, very much what you'd expect from them, but at the same time, like very heavy fuzz, like Gary Clark Jr. level, sort of like very intense fuzz. You know, they're not just doing, you know, dad rock or predictable radio rock, and I like that. You know, I think Billy Gibbons still wants to be cool. We still want him to be cool, and thankfully, he still is very much fucking cool. So yeah, the Reverend Billy Gibbons. you have to bow.
Speaking of Billy Gibbons, I've gone with ZZ Top, obviously / Billy Gibbons, for my number 4. For all the reasons that you pretty much just said, he's effortlessly cool. And this is a big thing, I think, when you go and see ZZ Top now. It's they carry this kind of coolness. It's, as you say, it could have easily have slipped into dad rock territory by now.
Could be awkward.
Yeah, and the thing is that, as you say, with Billy Gibbons, it's still like exploring new kind of things. You know, it's still he'll have a crack at something else now. It's like with this new album, he could have just gone through the motions, really, couldn't he?
He could, and it's not a ZZ Top album. It's a Billy Gibbons album, and I like that, man. I think he shows his creativity.
Yeah, but yes, it's that. I think it's that drive for doing, you know, like for getting creative still at this point in his career, and I think it's still an experience to go and see either ZZ Top or him on his own at this point.
Great point, yeah.
For those reasons, he's my number 4.
Hey, this is Leela from The Damn Truth, and in my opinion, one of the bands that is still killing it is ZZ Top. We got to tour with them in 2018, and it was probably the most incredible tour we've done to date. These guys are absolutely incredible live. They kill it every night. They are so entertaining, so hilarious. Like, it's just so incredible that they're still doing their thing. They still sound phenomenal. You know, was such a pleasure to stand backstage or side stage and watch them night after night. I remember that first night we were playing in Prince Edward Island, and we get to the arena and we were, you know, just excited and amazed and, you know, thanking our lucky stars that we were included on this trip, and just looking at the around us and imagining how the arena will be filled later on that night. And, you know, we played our set and it was amazing and it was a dream and it was well received. And then I just wanted to get off stage and watch ZZ Top play. It was way too exciting to be warming up the stage for them. And I'll never forget, like, that first moment where Billy gets on stage and you know, says his hey to the crowd and thanks for sticking with the band for 50 years. You know, it's the same 3 guys, same beards, same guys, same 3 chords. You know, it was just incredible. I love them. They're legendary, and definitely one of the most incredible bands still doing their thing and still sounding so amazing.
Very good choice. My number 4 is Judas Priest. Now, Priest have dropped down the the thing at that gig you spoke about where it was Priest, Megadeth and Testament. I remember they just brought out Nostradamus, and me and my dad, and it wasn't sold out that gig, and me and my dad were watching it, and we've really enjoyed it. But I can remember at that point thinking that it feels like Priest are just just dropping down it a little bit. Now that doesn't mean they're not still at the top, which is hence why they're where they are on my list. However, I think that where they're at now is where they deserve to be, and there's nothing wrong with that. The biggest thing that, and I know you agree because he was on your underrated guitarist list, the biggest thing that for me was a positive for them was KK leaving, bless him, and Richie coming in, because I just think it gave them this massive lease of life. You know, the albums are still immensely heavy. You know, it's I mean since Painkiller, Priest releasing Painkiller in the 90s was a genius because it made them instantly relevant. It was like, no, we're not. You're not going to forget about Judas Priest, you know, and Firepower, Redeemer of Souls is pretty similar, you know. It's really heavy, and I saw him at Civic Hall in Wolves, and they were just epic. You know, Rob's a legend, man. You know, he's an absolute hero of rock and roll. And again, I think if you went to see Priest, I don't think you'd come away disappointed. You'd get all the things Rob on his motorbike, you know, all the screams, all the classic songs. But then you'd get a bit of Richie and that new energy and some new material. And I think Priest are still rocking it, man.
No, that's a totally fair shout. In top three. My number three, it's a band that has been in your list lower down. It's Metallica. For me, Metallica get into the top three based on their musicianship and their level to still play at that high level. I do also have a problem with this bloody oval stage thing. I'm not a fan of that. What the hell's that about? You know, I don't like that. But I think if you're looking at can they still perform to the top level? You know, if you're a diehard Metallica fan, are you going to go there and go, oh, Jesus Christ, that was a bit disappointing? I don't think you would. You know, at this point, they've got that core fan base that will definitely go and see them. And I think, you know, they always seem to enjoy themselves. They're a band that I'd still want to go and see. But I'd want to go and see them if they weren't doing that damn oval stage. I think. I
mean, they're probably one of the biggest bands in the world.
This is it. I think, you know, they've still got that level of clout, I feel they're still very relevant today, and for those reasons, they have made it into my third place spot.
My number three is Bruce Springsteen.
He's high.
Yeah, man. I think the reason I've got him so high is one for his legacy. You know, Bruce. It feels like Springsteen's been around forever. Absolute legend. Covers a wide variety of different genres and fans, and therefore I think he's got to cater to different audiences all the time. And there's nothing I love more than like seeing Springsteen play somewhere like Glastonbury and just kill it. Like when I think of professional, like the ultimate pro, I think of Springsteen. You know, because he will play for 3 hours. He will run into the crowd. He will do everything, and he will give you absolutely what you deserve as a fan watching. And I love that. You know, and I think and even his new material. You know, the last few albums he's done, particularly he did an album called, I think it was called Wrecking Ball, and that was a really strong like Springsteen rock album. You know, I love the fact that he's still similar to Billy, where he wants to go out and he wants to make these records. He wants to challenge himself creatively, and for these songs to have their own place in that massive amount of material that he performs live. You know, and I just think he's a legend pro, and just still killing it. You know, and I think with Springsteen, I think if he reached a point where he wasn't doing that, I think he'd stop. I don't think he'd try and continue it for the sake of the money or anything, because I think he do everything he lives for is playing live. You know, he's a proper workhorse, man. You know, he really gives it everything. So yeah, Bruce Springsteen at number three.
Yes, my number two. It's a band that's featured in your list very recently. It's Judas Priest. Despite the fact that I rate them very highly, particularly the live band still. Even though, as we touched on there, it's they've kind of dropped down a little bit. in terms of the level that they're playing at. As we've said, they're doing large halls now rather than probably stadiums. But I think as an overall live experience, they offer everything. Like, I went to go and see them a few years ago, and it's still absolutely like killer. I remember watching them, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, this is cool. It felt like a real experience. As you say, Halford still comes out on the motorcycle. They're still in all the gear. It feels like a bit of a throwback thing. If I went and saw them in the 80s, I feel like I still got a very similar experience to that. And I think particularly for younger fans, to be able to have that still, as you say, it's necessarily just ticking off a band of that size and that legacy. And the tickets are still very cheap as well, and that's the thing. I feel like I got value for money out of them. Rob Halford hasn't lost his voice, and that's obviously a huge thing. If he was losing it, probably time to call it a day, but he hasn't lost it yet. So for that reason, they're right up there at number 2. And as you say, with Rich Faulkner as well, it's given them the new lease of life. So I think that's kept them up there for me. So yes.
My only worry with Priest is that bloody Tipton's obviously been replaced by Andy Sneap recently on the tours, and I think in the next couple of years, if that which I imagine is a continuation, and members start to be replaced by younger people that have been involved by the band.
Yeah, it's not Priest anymore.
No, I think that's the I don't want it to just be Rob. So I think that's the test for them when we next review this list. That will be the next test in the few years.
I think I'll put an asterisk next to it, and I'll put see them in the next 2 or 3 years, because I think beyond that you're probably not going to see, at least not going to see proper Priest, if you know what I mean. You're probably just going to see Rob Halford after that.
Is there anybody else in your list that you think in the next 2 to 3 years will probably not be on this list, apart from your number 1?
ZZ Top
be revealed. They'd be the same for me. I'd probably have Alice Cooper on my list. I think Alice is because of his age. I think he'll still be gigging, because I just don't think. I think he'll struggle to let go, but I think he will lose that quality that it should have.
Yes, I think. Yeah, I can see Aerosmith still doing it, because I think they're physically very fit. I think ZZ Top for me and Priest are probably the 2 that I put an asterisk of, see them in the next few years.
Number 1, I'm going to go with a Cult, just because there's not much I'm looking forward to that's going to be released at the minute. And I know them guys will deliver. Every album that they do evolves. They've never stuck to the same sound. They've always took it up a notch. They've tried things. Some things didn't work. Some things paid off massively. I still think they've got their identity. Straight away, the guitar tone or the vocal, it stems straight away. And I really dig that about bands. And they've never followed what everyone else did in a way. They've always created their own path, and that really does appeal to me with bands. The number 2, I'm going to go with Liam Gallagher, who was in the biggest band of the world. That fell apart. He had a low point, and then he thought, fuck this, I'm going to take back what was mine. He was never the main songwriter in Oasis, but he's been writing some absolute bangers, so I'm stoked to see what Liam's going to be doing going forward.
Yeah, what is your number 2 before we get to the big one?
My number 2, a lot of people, this is a toss-up between 2 gentlemen of Pink Floyd, and I went for Dave Gilmour rather than Roger Waters. They both offer very different things, and I've always been more a Dave Gilmour kind of guy. So Roger Waters, when you see him, his voice isn't very strong. Great band, great stage show, very theatrical. And Gilmour's is kind of the opposite of that. I think Gilmour's really made the most of his voice as it's aged. Very underrated voice. Like if you listen to Floyd's, like obviously Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, but particularly The Wall, like you hear how he uses his voice and how he uses the higher range of it. And over time, he's nurtured that very well. I mean, his last album, Rattle That Lock, was a bit more blues inspired, a bit more of what you'd expect from like an artist of his age, but still cool, still challenging himself, still making the most of his voice. I mean, he recently did, there's a classic gig in the 70s where the Pink Floyd played at Pompeii, and Gilmour went back and did that, and he did this with this amazing like circular like backdrop that did these just different kind of artistic scale, like visuals, backgrounds, and it was just epic, And I think if I saw Gilmour, I think I'd cry. I genuinely think I'd cry, and I wouldn't care. It'd be too much for me, because I think it'd be everything that I wanted it to be. Again, I think he's probably got 5-10 years. But I hope he'd call it a day. I think he's very well respected, in the whole sort of music world, and very cool, So yes, my number 2 is Mr. Dave Gilmour.
Hey folks, True Edvin here. I think the person that I think is still killing it after all the years he's been playing is Jeff Beck. From his first album Truth right through to the sort of 70s when he was doing Blow by Blow and Wired. Right up to Loud Hailer, the guy just keeps getting better and better. And he's one of the few, in my opinion, of that generation of guitar players who's continued to evolve and just get better at everything he does. When you see him play live at the Ronnie Scott show, that's just probably one of the best instrumental gigs that I've ever seen. So yeah, I'd say the person I think is still killing it and getting better year on year is Jeff Beck.
I think we have the same number 1.
I know, and it's probably wonderfully predictable. But it's probably as you said when we had the discussion. There's probably a reason for that, and it's probably the same reason a lot of people voted for it on the most recent Planet Rock the Rocks.
Yes, it is.
Who's your number 1?
Isn't it? It's Iron Maiden.
It's Iron Maiden.
For me, there's an entire package here. Like musicianship-wise, they're still at the top of the game. Bruce Dickinson vocally still at the top of his game. He's adapted slightly. He doesn't quite reach that level of octaves that he used to, but they've done it so that it's not really noticeable. The stage show is outrageous at this point. They have like different sets for each individual song, which I don't know any other band that actually does that at this point.
I think since Power Slave, they've always been a bit like that. They've always like gone crazy with the sets on the show.
Yeah, and it feels like an event when you go and see them, like a proper event. Like they feel like a huge band. Obviously, they still play stadiums, but. I've not come away from seeing Iron Maiden and gone, oh, that's a bit disappointing, or going, oh, they didn't play this or they didn't do that. They tick all the boxes, and they also throw in obviously the new songs that they're touring in that period of time, and it's all top tier for me still at this point. It's. Bruce has had a bit of a tough time. He somehow got over like throat cancer and is still singing at a very high level. He's still running about like an insane person. I think he's perhaps fitter than I am currently. So it's pretty mad in that regard. But I think they're still at the top of their game, and I could probably see them still doing it in like 6-7 years' time. I think they're genuinely still very fit, and I think they're one of the ones that I feel is a bit of a safe bet to be sticking around for a little while longer.
I agree entirely, man. I mean, I think Brucey's made up for, and this isn't covering the cracks. I think Brucey gives you a show because his voice has dropped off a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. He acknowledges that you might be missing out on something that he can no longer give you, so he's going to give you more of what he can. And him and Steve and Yannick. I mean, Yannick's so good live. He chucks his guitars all over the place. He's great. Dave's an awesome player. I mean, Adrian Smith's always been a bit of a recluse. I think he's always been a bit quiet. songwriter and stuff, but he still gives everything in the gig. And Nico's, you know, a legend, you know. So I've Steve and Bruce in particular. I think that the energy they give to the show is immense. I mean, Steve is one of the icons of heavy metal, you know, and I love how down to earth he is, and I love the fact that he still every show wants to give you the best Maiden gig you're ever going to have. And I think that's why so many younger fans are still drawn to the band, you know, as well as Eddie and the whole sort of concept and identity of Maiden, is because when you see him, it's just everything you've watched on the Live After Death fucking DVD or listen to the live albums, you know, when the Rocky in Rio, it's just like that, you know, and that for me is preserving your legacy. And like next Maiden album comes out, man, I can't wait. I can't wait, you know. I'm really excited to hear what they'll do next, you know. And it's like them. I mean, I wasn't so keen on Book of Souls, bit progressive, but Final Frontier, Matter of Life and Death, Dance of Death. I mean, these are old albums, now 15 years old, but Modern Maiden for me is still some of the strongest stuff of their career. So yeah, I just think they'll keep at that level. And do you reckon they'd know when to stop?
I hope so. I think, as I say, if Bruce's voice goes, I think it's still at a very high level still, even though it has dropped a little bit. It's not. We're not, as Brad has said with Vince Neil, we're not in Vince Neil territory there. You know, where it's clearly shot. You know, if he hits a point where he's starting to think, I'm not going to be able to do a tour, or I'm not going to be able to finish a gig, I'm hoping they'll realise to just go, that's it. Like, go out while you're on top. I think that's the thing. That's
the ultimate thing. My only worry is that I know Ron Smallwood, even though he loves the band, has been with them since the very beginnings. Is he's very driven. And he's always pushed the band to nearly, like, I think that's what meant Bruce left, because they were just gigging for 13 months, you know, on a tour in the late 80s, and he's constantly pushed them, and now he's still pushing them now. And I think he needs to try and protect the legacy, protect the band, and it'll give them more longevity and maybe he's doing that now. I mean, it's been a while since Maiden have been out on the road, you know, so maybe that's the reason why, is he's just protects them a little bit more. But yeah, deserving toppers of this list and the winners of the Rock's Best Live Band for me. I think Maiden are very much still at the top.
No, I completely agree. There's one elephant in the room that I feel I have to address, because some people.
I was just about to do the same. I think there's several notable exemptions that we'll probably get held up for. But do you do one, and then I'll do one.
The one that I think people will be going, where are they? Is obviously AC/DC aren't in the list. I think that they've hit the point where they're not what they were. Bold claims, I know. Some people will go, no, you're wrong. but I think, you know, that like they're not the same band at this point. Obviously, Malcolm's passed away. You know, it's they've hit an age where, you know, I think they're in the 70s now, aren't they? Some of them. And, you know, which is ridiculous. To have lasted this long is outrageous. But I think I've seen some videos where, you know, Brian Johnson he doesn't sound quite there now, does he? He's starting to lose that voice. So I think for those reasons, I'm a bit like, I don't really want to put them in the top 10. Because I don't think they can bring that full show that they could have done probably 5 or 10 years ago.
My problem with DC Man is, I think when they reformed and did Black Ice, in terms of the album, in terms of the album, in terms of the show, I saw them on that tour and they were unbelievable. Literally, like one of the top 3 best gigs I've ever been to. Like literally, like incredible. If after that tour, I mean, it's one of the fastest selling tours of all time, they just said, thank you ever so much, and that's it. I think you're preserving the legacy. Now, there's lots of things in relation to this. They might want to keep touring. Maybe they love it, you know, but I think it takes strength. You've got to be able to stop yourself and go, hang on a minute, what's best for the band. You know, what's the best representation of ourselves? You know, and I think I agree completely. I just feel like it's not. We're not saying they need to be at the same level they were at in 1980. It's just in terms of the past 10 years, man. You know, I think if they're slowly getting poor in terms of live performances, a lot of energy goes into them gigs. You know, and in order to, they've set that standard, which is awesome. But if you can't make that standard, walk away. And that's key. Another notable exemption is probably Guns N' Roses.
Yeah,
I've seen Guns N' Roses with Axl at Download. I really struggled with it. I just didn't. I mean, I'd much rather see Slash with Miles Kennedy, because you get all the Slash's stuff. You get Velvet Revolver, you know, and you get Slash Snake's Pit, and I just think I get an overall better quality for my money. You know, I mean, Slash could have probably been in this list, maybe. You know, I think Slash, in terms of his songwriting and his performance, is still very strong. I just think Guns N' Roses is a bit of a novelty. The moment they had Axl went on tour with DC, I mean, that's nonsense for me.
Yeah.
I think that's disgrace, absolute disgrace to the legacy of both bands.
Yeah, I think for me, Axl's voice has gone. It's we're not. I mean, for me, Vince Neil is the bar of who's shot. Like, he's that example of, are you completely finished? I don't think he's quite there yet, but he's getting near it. You know, I think we're going to start and see Axl Rose struggle to finish gigs soon, which is sad. You know, I don't want to see that.
Thanks ever so much to everyone for getting involved in that. You know, it's always interesting to hear other people's opinions. I mean, it's only our opinions in these top tens, and we thought it'd be cool to kind of cast a different shade on it, you know, because everybody's different. But we want to know your opinions as well, so make sure you comment below. Who you would be your preferred favorite classic bands that are still hitting the top? You know, we're not right, we're not wrong.
No,
you know, it's, you know, we're very open-minded, you know, and this is a positive thing, celebrating bands that have looked after themselves and still give you the fans what they deserve, which for me is the bottom line.
Exactly, that's the thing. So yes, that is it for this week's Extra Vibes. If you like what we're doing, you can subscribe to us to see more. Obviously, we do the podcast as well, where we have lots of great guests every Saturday from 10 a.m. And if you want to find out who that guest is, you can like our Facebook, and every Wednesday from 10 a.m. Yes, you will find out who that guest is.
You will indeed. Thank you, Mr. Basie. I mean, our normal show comes out on YouTube. It also goes out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts every Saturday morning, as Mr. Basie, very well informed. However, this exclusive content you're watching exclusively on YouTube, and you can watch more of that if you subscribe to our lovely faces. Thank you for your ears and your eyes and your time. I think that flowed very well. I think that was a very nice little... very intense, very, you know, that's how I used to finish dates. I'd just go, thank you for your ears and your eyes and your time. And then I'd just repeat that before eventually just slinking off like that. Didn't get many callbacks.
No.
More of that another time. But, yeah, thank you for watching.